Welcome to week 3 in our Management 301 class. This week we're going to be looking at chapter 3, Managing in a Global Environment. We read in Matthew 7:12, "In everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you, for this is the law and the prophets." We refer to this as the Golden Rule. I personally believe that if we would all practice this in our everyday lives, this world would be such a much better place. Have any of you ever been to a country outside of the United States? I have. I went on a missions trip to Guyana several years ago. It was an eye-opening experience and one that I cherish to this day. That trip enabled me to see the world from a different perspective as mine. This chapter is about managing in a global environment. Living and working in a foreign country for an extended period can be a transformational experience that prepares people for an increasingly interconnected global work environment. However, it isn't always easy. Many companies have found that doing business internationally can be very challenging. As we begin this chapter, your company is sending you to China as a manager of one of its manufacturing divisions. I want you to reflect upon the above statement. Then think through the following questions. What aspect of your new position are you most excited about? And what aspect of your new position causes you the most fear? And I'm going to pause for just a moment. I really want you to think about this scenario. Three one, a borderless world. Every manager today needs to be able to think globally because the whole world is a source of business threats and opportunities. International management is the management of business operations conducted in more than one country. Fundamental management tasks stay the same, but risks and complexity increase across borders in planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. In fact, the FBI ranks international cybercrime as one of its top priorities because electronic boundaries between countries are virtually non-existent. The entire boundary mindset has been done away with. And what we've got to understand is this world is more connected than it's ever been in the past. And we can sit, just think of it in terms of just practicality, because we can see it, with our phones or um, iPads or computers, and we can literally talk to anyone all around the world via FaceTime or meetings on the computers. There's just this world is so interconnected, and it's led to globalization. Globalization is the extent to which trade and investments, information, social and cultural ideas, and political cooperation flow between countries. And I do encourage you in your textbook, make sure you read on page 87, Bosslessness Emerges Around the Globe. That is a very good source of information, and it talks about how companies are moving, not just in the United States, but countries around the world are going to bosslessness in their leadership styles. But globalization leads to increasing interdependence among countries, businesses, and people. Um, and it's also leading to fewer large international corporations located in the United States. Fortune magazine CEO Alan Murray wrote a few years ago that the world is in the early stages of a new industrial revolution that is based on a model where everyone is connected everywhere and at all the time in a vast web of interactive data. And so when we look at Exhibit 3.1, the shifting geography of Global 500 companies, in 2009 you can see that the U.S. had 140 of the Global 500 companies and China only had 37. Jump ahead 10 years, a decade, and China is almost equal to the number of Global 500 companies. It's 121 in the U.S. to 119 for China. So in just a 10-year span, China has now got 119 of the Global 500 companies. And so China has almost overtaken the United States in the number of Global 500 companies around the world. In order to succeed on a global level, it requires more than a desire to go global. It requires a new set of skills and techniques, and it requires that managers and organizations develop a global mindset. Now, a global mindset is the ability of managers to appreciate and influence individuals, groups, organizations, and systems that possess different social, cultural, political, institutional, intellectual, and psychological characteristics. And so you've got to expand a global mindset, thinking, being curiosity, doing relationships with people across cultural and national boundaries. 3 dimensions of a global mindset: the cognitive dimension, the psychological dimension, and the social dimension, and those all make up the global mindset. The cognitive dimension is knowing about the global environment and global business, mentally understanding how cultures differ and having the ability to interpret complex global changes. The psychological dimension is the emotional and affective aspect that includes a liking for diverse ways of thinking and acting, a willingness to take risks, and the energy and self-confidence to deal with the unpredictable and the uncertain. The social dimension concerns the ability to behave in ways that build trusting relationships with people who are different from yourself. And one of the things that I think we've got to understand, and I think this is one of the problems when we start developing and doing business globally and trying to develop a global mindset, is too often people fail to understand there are differences in different cultures. Not everyone operates in the same way, in the same manners of the United States. Globalization has added to the world's wealth, but firms and nations are also discovering that globalization adds risks to prosperity in ways that they had not previously anticipated. Section 3.2, the changing international landscape. When we look at the changing international landscape, the first thing is China rising. China, it seems incredible that China was a market of little interest just a few decades ago. A report from research firm eMarketer indicated that China, with the fastest growing middle class in history, will soon overtake the United States as the world's largest retail market. China is the largest or second largest market for a variety of products and services. However, regulations and governmental policies make doing business in China a challenge. In 2011, just 2 of the top 10 smartphone makers in China were Chinese. However, within a decade, 8 of those market leaders were Chinese, with Apple and Samsung the only foreign holdouts. And 6 of the top smartphone brands worldwide are now Chinese. For foreign firms doing business in China, it's never been a smooth path. And it's only gotten more difficult in recent years. Entrepreneurs from the United States and other Western countries who once viewed China as a place with endless opportunities are now exiting the country or drastically scaling back their plans there. The reason is new regulations, increased taxes and other costs, and tighter government control make life hard for foreign companies in all industries. For internet companies such as Facebook, Twitter, eBay, Google, China has often been more of a source of trouble and frustration than of new customers. Because of government restrictions on foreign companies and controls over the internet use, sometimes referred to as the Great Firewall, China's large domestic tech firms have thrived even as foreign competitors have been excluded or pressured to share confidential technology. A bitter trade war with the United States further complicates operations for firms and managers. India, the service giant. India is second only to China in population. India has taken a different path toward economic development. China is strong in manufacturing. However, India is a rising power in software design, services, and precision engineering. India also has a large English-speaking population, making it a natural for U.S. companies that are outsourcing services. And it's an industry leader in IT outsourcing. India is also a growing manufacturer of pharmaceuticals and is the world's largest exporter of generic drugs. However, India also imports nearly 70% of the raw materials and active ingredients for drugs from China, and restrictions on travel and production connected with the coronavirus or COVID outbreak in early 2020 almost sent shockwaves through India's pharmaceutical industry. Section 3.3, multinational corporations. A large volume of international business is being carried out by large international businesses that can be thought of as global corporations, stateless corporations, or transnational corporations. A multinational corporation, or MNC, receives more than 25% of its total sales revenues from operations outside parent's home country. The characteristics, it's managed as a integrated worldwide business systems controlled by a single management authority and regard the entire world as one market. They can, in a few cases, the MNC management philosophy may differ from that just described. For example, some researchers have distinguished among ethnocentric companies, which place emphasis on their home countries, polycentric companies that are oriented toward the markets of individual foreign host countries, and geocentric companies are world-oriented and favor no specific country. So we come to our first knowledge check. Which of the following most fits the characteristics of a multinational corporation? A. Starbucks and Barnes & Noble bookstores formed a joint alliance to locate Starbucks coffee shops within Barnes & Noble locations. B. Pfizer, the pharmaceutical company, sells products in more than 125 companies and operates nearly 50 manufacturing facilities around the world. C. Good Clothing Company manufactures fabric and is committed to reshoring the U.S.-based apparel industry. Or D. VT Industries produces architectural doors in its divisions in both the United States and Canada. I'm going to give you just a moment to think about that before we answer. If you chose B, you would be correct. Pfizer, the pharmaceutical company, sells products in more than 125 companies and operates nearly 50 manufacturing facilities around the world. The reason A is not the correct answer is although Starbucks is a MNC, Barnes & Noble is strictly a U.S. company, so their partnership was only for Starbucks within the U.S. locations that Barnes & Noble has. C is also incorrect. Good Clothing Company's commitment to reshoring operations takes it in the opposite direction of an MNC. D is also an incorrect answer. VT Industries may or may not receive 25% of sales revenue from outside its home country. The answer does not specify, and option B is a better choice. Serving the bottom of the pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid, or BOP, is a concept that proposes that corporations can alleviate poverty and other social ills as well as make significant profits by selling to the world's poorest people. So one of the things that we've got to keep in mind is large multinational organizations are accused of making many negative contributions to society. However, these large organizations and companies have the resources that are needed in order to do good things in the world. And one of the approaches is serving the bottom of the pyramid. The location on the pyramid is defined by per capita income. More than 4 billion people worldwide are at the lowest level of the economic pyramid. Now, if there's 8 billion people on planet Earth, and more than 4 billion of those people are at the lowest level of the economic pyramid, that means that nearly 50% or roughly 50% of the world's population are at the lowest level of the economic pyramid. Proponents of BOP thinking believe multinational firms can contribute to positive, lasting change when the profit motive goes hand in hand with the desire to make life better for humankind. And before we go on, I want you to think about this. Do you think, or do you believe personally, do you believe that these large corporations should make this investment and do positive things in the countries and areas in which they do business? Something to ponder. Personally, I believe that these corporations should. I believe personally that some of the profits that these corporations make, and some of these larger corporations are making billions and billions and billions of dollars in profits. They should take some of those profits and invest back into those communities in which they serve and operate, where those customers and their customer base comes from, and make life-changing investments to help those that are less fortunate. Just a thought to ponder. Do you think it is realistic that BOP business practices can have a positive effect on poverty and other social problems in developing countries? Examples. Unilever's efforts over many years to prevent the spread of disease in poor areas of the world by introducing inexpensive soap products to the people there. Another example, Procter & Gamble's efforts to get people in developing countries to use diapers and feminine hygiene products that sell at low prices as a way to positively impact the general health of the population or even reduce diseases. And these are just a few examples of companies that do or are trying to do the right things in the countries and areas and communities in which they operate and serve. We then shift our focus to section 3.4, getting started internationally. Organizations can pursue several options to become involved in international markets. One is to seek cheaper resources such as materials or labor offshore, a practice called offshoring or global outsourcing. Another is to develop markets for finished products or services outside of their home countries through strategies such as exporting and partnerships. Exhibit 3.3 shows three approaches that the companies often use to engage in the international arena, either to acquire resources or to enter new markets. Exporting. Many companies first get involved internationally by exporting. With exporting, the company maintains its production facilities within the home nation and ships those finished products for sale in foreign countries. Outsourcing, global outsourcing, also called offshoring, means engaging in the international division of labor so that work activities can be done in countries with the cheapest sources of labor and supplies. And then partnerships. Partnerships represent a higher level of involvement in international trade. One popular type of partnership is a joint venture, in which one company shares costs and risks with another firm, typically in the host country, to develop new products, build a manufacturing facility, or to set up sales and distribution network. A partnership is often the fastest, cheapest, and least risky way to get involved in global in the global economy. Exporting and outsourcing, and we've talked about these. Global outsourcing is also called offshoring. International partnerships. We talked about these. A joint venture, again, is a company that shares costs and risks with another firm. One of the things that's interesting, and you can read this on page 98 in your textbook, the concept connection that talks about the joint venture between the U.S.-based Kellogg Company and Singapore-based Wilmar International Limited for the manufacture, sale, and distribution of breakfast cereals and snacks in China. Now we shift to section 3.5, legal political challenges. Differing laws and regulations make doing business a challenge for international firms. Managers must deal with unfamiliar political systems when they go international, as well as with more government supervision and regulation. Political risk, the risk of loss of assets, earning power, or managerial control due to political changes or instability in a host country. This can include internal conflicts such as social unrest, ethnic violence, social activism, and politically motivated terrorism and cyber threats. It also includes government actions such as changes in laws, taxes, and other regulations. Political instability includes riots, revolutions, civil disorders, and frequent changes in government. These events frequently affect operations of international corporations. Section 3.6, social cultural challenges. Many managers fail to realize that the values and behaviors that typically govern how business is done in their own country don't always translate to the rest of the world. Ethnocentrism, it refers to a natural tendency of people to regard their own culture as superior and to downgrade or dismiss other cultural values. Hofstede's value dimensions. 4 dimensions of national value systems that influence organizational and employee working relationships. And those 4 are power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism and collectivism, and then finally masculinity, femininity. And then the GLOBE project, Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness, has 9 dimensions that explain cultural differences. So let's look at Hofstede's value dimensions. Power distance. Um, the level of acceptance of inequality and power among institutions, organizations, and people. High power distance means that people accept inequality and power. Low power distance means that people expect equality in power. Uncertainty avoidance, the comfort level with uncertainty and ambiguity. And so a high uncertainty avoidance means that members of society feel uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity, and therefore support beliefs and structures that promise certainty and conformity. Individualism and collectivism. Individualism is a value for a loosely knit social framework which individuals are expected to take care of themselves. Collectivism is a preference for a tightly knit social framework in which individuals look after one another and organizations to protect their members' interests. The fourth dimension is masculinity and femininity. Masculinity, preference for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, work centrality with resultant high stress and material success. Femininity values relationships, cooperation, group decision making, and quality of life. A fifth dimension was developed later, and it deals with long-term versus short-term orientation. Long-term orientation, it has a greater concern for the future and highly values thrift and perseverance. Short-term orientation is more concerned with the past and the present and places a high value on tradition and meeting social obligations. And so when we look at Exhibit 3.4, it's a rank orderings of 10 countries along 4 dimensions of national value systems. And 1 equals the highest power distance, 10 equals the lowest power distance, 1 equals the highest individualism, 10 the lowest, etc. And so what we see here is the United States is about 6 on power distance, 8 on uncertainty avoidance, 1 on individualism, and 4 on masculinity. Give each of the following situations a score of 1 to 5, weak to strong, on each of Hofstede's value dimensions: power distance, uncertainty avoidance, and individualism versus collectivism. And then explain your rating. A manager sends you an email requesting that you and your team update critical data regarding a manufacturing facility that has not been performing as expected. A manager frequently interrupts female subordinates while encouraging male subordinates to find creative solutions to problems, and a manager sees an employee working on an algorithm to improve the marketing department's access to customer data and encourages the employee to spend more time on it. So, manager sends you an email requesting that you and your team update critical data regarding a manufacturing facility that has not been performing as expected. And it would be a high power distance, high uncertainty avoidance, and low individualism. B. Manager frequently interrupts female subordinates while encouraging male subordinates to find creative solutions to problems. medium power distance, medium uncertainty avoidance, and high individualism. A manager sees an employee working on an algorithm to improve the marketing department's access to customer data and encourages the employee to spend more time on it. Low power distance, low uncertainty avoidance, and high individualism. In addition to the four characteristics identified by Hofstede, the GLOBE project identifies the following: assertiveness, the extent to which a society encourages toughness, assertiveness, and competitiveness. Future orientation, the extent to which a society encourages planning for the future over short-term results. Gender differentiation, the extent to which a society maximizes gender role differences. Performance orientation, the extent to which a society places emphasis on performance and rewards people for improvement. And then humane orientation, the degree to which a society encourages and rewards people for being fair, altruistic, generous, and caring. Looking at Exhibit 3.5, rankings on selected GLOBE value dimensions. And you can see there the different countries and how they rank, you know, as if low, medium, or high in each of those 5 dimensions. The United States ranks high in assertiveness and performance orientation, medium in humane orientation. And so you can look at those and kind of see how the value dimensions and the rankings of the different countries there in Exhibit 3.5. Communication challenges. We all know that miscommunication can occur even among our closest friends, co-workers, or even family members. So it's no wonder that we should expect miscommunication to dramatically increase when managers are interacting with people from different cultures or different countries and varied cultural backgrounds. Implicit communication means that people send and receive unspoken cues such as tone of voice or body language in addition to the explicit spoken words when talking with others. High context culture. People are sensitive to circumstances surrounding social exchanges. And then low context culture. People use communication primarily to exchange facts and information, and meaning is derived primarily from words. So we look at Exhibit 3.6. High context, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, Arab, Greek, Spanish, Italian, English, and as you go down, you get closer to the low context, and German is there. So, and North American is closer to low context. And then cultural intelligence. Our book discusses cultural intelligence. It's a person's ability to use reasoning and observation skills to interpret unfamiliar gestures and situations and devise appropriate behavioral responses. Cognitive component. A person's observational skills and recognition of clues to understanding. The emotional component. A person's self-confidence and self-motivation. And then the physical component, a person's ability to shift his or her speech patterns, expressions, and body language to match those in a different culture. Then we go to section 3.7, International Trade Alliances. GATT, G-A-T-T, and the WTO. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, was signed by 23 nations in 1947. It started as a set of rules to ensure non-discrimination, clear procedures, negotiation of disputes, and participation of lesser developed countries in international trade. Then the World Trade Organization, or WTO, it was a maturation of GATT into permanent global institute. 164 member countries had joined by July of 2016. Then there is the European Union. It's a 27-nation alliance to improve economic and social conditions among the members. It's a powerful single market system for Europe's millions of consumers, allowing people, goods, and services to move freely. It's more competitive with other markets because of economies of scale. And the euro is the single European currency that replaced national currencies in many European countries. Exhibit 3.7, and you can see this on page 109 of your textbook, shows the nations of the European Union. And it also has, in the yellow there is the members, and then in the pinkish color are candidates to become members in the European Union. Brexit is the term that refers to the United Kingdom's formal withdrawal from A. GATT, B. WTO, C. the EU, or D. NAFTA. If you chose C, you would be correct. The United Kingdom, which never adopted the euro, voted by referendum in June of 2016 to withdraw from the European Union entirely and formally left the EU on January the 31st, 2020. The GATT is, answer A there is incorrect, because the GATT is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade signed by 23 nations in 1947 and started as a set of rules to international trade. B, the WTO, is the World Trade Organization, and it represents the maturation of GATT into a prominent global institution to monitor international trade and arbitrate disputes. And D, NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement that went into effect in 1994, merging the United States, Canada, and Mexico into a single market. Speaking of the United States, Mexico, and Canada, the USMCA, the United States, Mexico, and Canadian Agreement, it's a trade agreement that was signed in late 2018. It was a revision of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, that merged the United States, Canada, and Mexico into a single market in 1994. Annual trade flows among the three countries largely unchanged. It establishes tougher rules on labor and environmental standards and new provisions for e-commerce and information technology.